Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here with a long-awaited video. Doing a haul. I know it's been a while. I mentioned in my previous video that March would be a really busy month for me, and it was. We had Aaron's friends from England visit for 2 weeks. So, that was very preoccupying. We did a lot together. Went out to Old Town. We saw the St. Patty's Parade, things like that. I can just, put up random pictures and stuff for you guys to see. It was a lot of fun, pretty hectic though. And then the day after they left, I went and saw Into the Woods with Laura and Nakia, my friends, and that was a really good time. But again, we had these tickets planned in advance, and it's right after they leave, and then after that was my mom's birthday, and then my birthday. So March is always a very, very busy month for me, but it was a good one this year. And after kind of all the usual birthday stuff, they left, and kind of over the month, I've sort of just been collecting books and little hauls here and there, as the excuse of it, being my birthday month. So I've just kind of amassed a few things, and yesterday we just kind of had our last big sort of book buying blowout for the month, because Nakia and I both have March birthdays, as I've said before, so we just tend to lump things together. So this year we went to the Bookseller in Lincoln, which is one of our favorite places. I should have gotten some pictures. I'll ask the girls if they have any, or if I can find some, I'll splice them in here. But yeah, this place is always really cool. They always go all out with the decorations. They had a big dragon skeleton up in the rafters, and all of the category signs were little bookends with ravens on top of them and stuff. Or if it was relevant to the section, they had a Disney one where it was Disney memorabilia or whatever, and they just had a little Mickey Mouse on top of it. It's really cool. It's one of our favorite places. So that was kind of our big together birthday buyout, which is funny because I didn't actually buy that much, all things considered, from what I've amassed. Partially because of, space concerns, but also it's just been, tough to, really, find my rhythm with things lately. Not reading as much as I would like, but I am reading, which is good. And I did get a decent amount of reading done while they were here as well. It was a really good month. I had a good time. It was really nice to just kind of let go and have fun, amid everything. So, yeah, not going to really go in any order. These are from all over the place because, we've been to Half Price multiple times. We went to Barnes & Noble. There were and then, like I say, Bookseller. There were various book buying sprees, mini sprees, I'll say. So this is just kind of everything lumped together. First we have Callahan's Secret by Spider Robinson. I think this one is from Half Price. This is a Cross Time Saloon collection. Which I don't know much about, but Spider Robinson, I've heard the name before. He appears a lot in reference to the new wave sci-fi of the 60s and 70s and that sort of thing. So I've heard a bit about him, but it's one of these things where it focuses on a fantasy or science fiction tavern where a bunch of different characters come together and they tell a story. And the whole book is basically a collection of different tales of, the members of this bar. There's a few like that, Tales from the White Heart by Arthur C. Clarke and things like that. And I always really like that sort of thing, so whenever I kind of find an example of that, I like to pick it up. Plus, I really liked this cover art again. I mean, it's very colorful and vibrant and sort of a weird mix of fantasy and sci-fi. I don't know who did that. I can't read the signature there, but I'll look up who did that and I'll put it on the screen because, yeah, I really like that. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. I always love a good sci-fi paperback, you guys know. And speaking of, here's another one, which is also from Half Price. Cats Have No Lord by Will Shetterly. There we go. Another one that I was really just intrigued by because of the title and the cover art. And it does sound interesting. It's like a quest novel where a barbarian, a priest, all that stuff. They have to go on an adventure to solve the oldest riddle of them all: why do cats have no lord? And it's implied that the answering of that question will lead to to some sort of apocalypse. So that just sounds really silly and interesting. sort of like, Piers Anthony, like Robert Aspirin, like sort of irreverent sci-fi types, sci-fi fantasy type stuff. I enjoy that sort of thing. So this is just a completely random find. This is not something I would normally buy, but this is a paperback romance novel, Trick or Treat, a Halloween romance collection. This is 4 novellas by Lark Eden, Laurie Handeland, Stoby Peel, and Linda Trent. I really just picked this up at Bookseller. They had a huge romance section, and they were selling them for like $1 each. If you could fill a bag, you could take them away for $15. I couldn't justify that because I just really don't read these enough. But I saw this, and it's Halloween related. So yeah, it's from the 90s. It's hetero as far as I know. So it's probably not really meant to appeal to me, but it's Halloween related, and maybe I can translate the events within. I've read a few sort of like spooky collections like this, and I always enjoy them, at least just for the Halloween vibes, if nothing else. So who knows? Maybe they might be good. I have read some hetero romance novels of this ilk that I've really enjoyed. So we'll see. Oh yeah, this was a birthday buy from Barnes & Noble, just because we all saw it and it was like 50% off, so we were just like, okay, it sounds interesting and we all want to read it, so we're going to try and make this a buddy read sometime soon. This is Apparently Sir Cameron Needs to Die by Greer Stothers. There we go. And it's got these really beautiful sprayed edges, if you can see. Come on. God, I feel like a makeup YouTuber. But yeah, it's got these really beautiful sprayed edges. And it's like a sort of a cozy queer fantasy. I don't want to just read the back of these because I always find that really boring when people just read the blurb. But it's about a prince named Sir Cameron who's being hunted after by this sorcerer, and he ends up capturing him and turning him into a vulture. And they have this sort of like love-hate relationship that eventually blossoms into something more. And it sounds very sort of silly and cute and kind of Princess Bride-esque, but queer. And obviously, all of us enjoy that sort of thing. So you might be hearing my thoughts about this sometime soon. It depends on how quickly we get through it. But yeah, really looking forward to that. Don't know really anything about it. I just thought the premise was cool. Vibes are a big thing for me, if you guys don't know. I'm really annoyed about this, but happy about it at the same time. So this is a Shadow Play by L.R. Lamb. Sorry, I don't know how you pronounce it. So they wrote, what was that book? Dragonfall, it's right there. And I started that book, and I just really couldn't get into it, and I'm not sure why, like, I think the writing felt kind of like stilted and like sort of like overly mannered to me, and I never just like got like sucked in. But it was also a while ago, and I'm very picky about these sorts of things. And this sounded really good. So the reason I'm annoyed about this is because I found out I bought this because it's about an ex, circus clown, and it's sort of like, space sort of fantasy kind of magic-y stuff, with like circuses and magic and all that kind of thing. There's all this stuff about, shadow play, like theater and that, like all that stuff, which I always really enjoy. So I bought this just off the strength of that. And then I found out this is a sequel. This is actually the middle book in a trilogy. I was really annoyed about that. But then I looked it up, and the first book was on sale for like $8.50 or something like that. So yeah, I grabbed the first book. So I'm not too upset about this. So I can't really say much about the plot. But I didn't even realize, like, when I was reading it originally, that it was a sequel, and it's not numbered or anything, which is a thing that always annoys me about these. But yeah, fantasy, circus, spooky, theatrical, that type of vibe, stage magic, illusion, like that's all my shit. So, we'll see. We will see. This one was interesting. So this is I'm sure a lot of you have seen these blind dates with a book things where they wrap up a book and they don't tell you what it is other than maybe a few minor details or a plot summary or whatever. And the whole idea is like, it's a blind date. You're sort of betting on a book, And I always really enjoy those when I can afford them. And this was one that Nakia pointed out to me that sounded really interesting because it said it took place in World War II, and it was about like a boy's friendship with like a Chinese boy's friendship with some older like Japanese people. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds intriguing. And that turned out to be this. This is The Samurai's Garden by Gail Tsukiyama. I've never heard of this author or this book. But they must have been well regarded if they were a bestseller. I've not heard of Women of the Silk or anything like that. But it does sound interesting. That is what it's about. And they're clearly trying to like sell her. Critics nationwide have praised Gail Tsukiyama for her vivid characters and crystalline prose. So it's like, before you even get to the plot summary, they're really pushing it. So yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of this author, but that's essentially what it's about. It's about a young Chinese man who's sent to his family's summer home in Japan to recover from an illness, and he meets some, older people there who kind of like, I assume, sort of like open him up to the world and things like that. I'm not sure. This really isn't like the type of thing I would normally read. It's very sort of like contemporary, well, not contemporary because it is historical, but very, very kind of literary oriented, sort of like a character drama type stuff. Like I wouldn't normally read that kind of thing, but that's one of the things I like about these blind dates with a book. Taking a chance on things. I'm always championing that, so put my money where my mouth is. And it's short, so if I don't like it, it's not that long. I'll have to look up the author. I've never heard of her before. But, yeah. It says she lives in El Cerrito, which isn't far from here, so I don't know. I'll have to look her up. Curious. And then you can probably guess why I picked this one up. This is Mindfuck. It's kind of a murky cover. There we go. This is Mindfuck by Mana Francis. So I picked this up just based off of the title. And then I read the back, and it's gay sci-fi, sort of, cyberpunk, cyberpunk detective type thing. I really don't know much else about it other than that. As soon as I saw that premise, and you don't normally find MM books, out in the wild. So whenever I find them, I try to grab them. And this actually does sound really interesting. As I say, gay cyberpunk stuff, which I'm always here for. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out as well. I'm an easy sell, If it's gay, I'll probably buy it. You will see more evidence of that forthcoming. I actually received some comments recently talking about seeing gayness and everything. And if you're that type of person, then there's the door. You can fuck off and leave. All right. So speaking of, this is Getting It Right by Jesse McGuire, which, again, I've never heard of, but it said a new novel by the author of On the Edge. And that reminded me of that Keanu Reeves movie, what is it, River's Edge? And then there was that other like, late 70s, early 80s one, like Over the Edge or something like that. It just reminded me of that, and it kind of looks like it has that kind of vibe, so I picked it up. And it's about, like, it basically is that, it's like your sort of brat pack type, sort of angsty teenagers, but, it deals with one of the characters like coming out as gay, and then like them having to deal with that. And it sounds like it weaves kind of like, rather than just kind of being a side character, it kind of like weaves that theme throughout kind of the book. So I don't know. Like I say, I'm not normally into sort of the teen dramas either, but again, it's under 200 pages. It'll be a quick read. I don't know. Me, I'm curious about these things. So. And this one was another one I picked up purely just based off of the cover art and just skimming the back. This is The White Bull by Fred Saberhagen. I mean, that is just cool-ass cover art, like, regardless. Like, who did that? Don't even know if it's... Oh, Gary Riddell. Gary Riddell. Well, yeah, your cover got me to pick up this book, so... So yeah, this is basically like all these like characters from Greek legend, as it says, Daedalus, Icarus, Theseus, Ariadne, Minos, etc. And they're in the lair of the Minotaur, so exploring sort of the worlds of the Minotaur and like working through things, and obviously it seems that Minotaurs play a big part in the story, and I like Minotaurs, obviously, so I'm very much for reading an entire novel about them. I've heard of Fred Saberhagen, and I've kind of read like tiny bits and pieces here and there. I have a bunch of his stuff. He wrote this like Book of the Swords series that I was always really interested in, because each book is like about a different sword with like a different power and like how it affects people and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. He also did like the Frankenstein tapes, I think, and stuff like that. So seen him around everywhere. But yeah, that just off the strength of the back and the cover art, I grabbed that. So you're gonna notice a recurring theme here. This is Game Changer by Rachel Reed. This is the first book in the what is it called? I want to call it the Game Changers series. I want to call it Heated Rivalry. I'm sure that's annoying to all the hardcore fans, but but yeah, this is the first book in the Game Changers series, which, as I say, it's where Heated Rivalry is from. And I enjoyed Heated Rivalry enough that when Aaron asked me for an Amazon order for my birthday, he was like, "Hey, is there anything on your wish list that you want me to grab?" I was like, "Why not?" I enjoyed the first one. I know, it's one of those series where they're not all directly connected to each other, but I liked her writing enough, to see what she would do with different types of characters and things like that, so, I don't know. I'm just always happy to own more of this stuff, Be as gay as possible. I'm embracing that today, Once again, this is another one that Aaron got off of Amazon, and again, this is one that I bought purely based off of the premise. This is, and the cover's really pretty, too. This is, The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. So this is essentially a 17th century France fantasy retelling of, the whole case of the Beast of Gévaudan. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but, it was a story, it was all these attacks, that were happening, these mutilations and killings that were happening in this, forested area of France back in the 1700s that were blamed on, a werewolf, incidents of werewolfism. It's one of the kind of most famous sort of historical cases of that. Obviously, in real life, talking about this, it's all bullshit. We know this, but, the seeds for interesting storytelling emerge, and so this is sort of a gay fantasy retelling of that, where it's about a hunter, a man, it's 20 years after, I believe it is 20 years. Let me make sure I'm correct. Yeah, I was right. 20 years ago, and he was involved with the attack and, tracking the creature down, and some similar killings start happening, and he ends up getting together with another guy that he helped him investigate the crime originally, and they were ex-lovers and stuff like that, and I was like, some fun, gothic, 18th century France, gay fantasy, Anne Rice kind of stuff, I don't know, I'm here for that, and it's about werewolves, it's about werewolves, man, I got it, or at least, I don't know, something werewolf adjacent, because, the creature on the front, which actually, I gotta show this, these end papers here, because look at that, that is beautiful. So I assume it's not a werewolf, but we'll see. But yeah, who did that art? Christina Morozic, I'll put the name up, but yeah, that's just beautiful, beautiful art. So yeah, again, all of those things put together, and it has really nice, sprayed red edges, so yeah, I don't know when I'll get to that, but I might actually get to that because I did finish Three Musketeers, which I will talk about, but I'm definitely craving more of that sort of vibe, so we'll see. Again, as always, we will see. I can never predict where the reading winds are going to take me, Alright, last little stack here. So I got some more James White books. Got Hospital Station. Oh, let me show that better. Hospital Station. The Genocidal Healer. And Ambulance Ship. As you can see, these are all Sector General novels, which I talked about a couple years ago in a previous birthday book haul. These were all, I'll just hold up the first one. These were all a series of medical sci-fi short stories that were written by, I believe he was an Irish writer, back from the 60s to the 90s, under the name Sector General. And they were basically sci-fi, medical story, as I say, medical stories, think ER, but with aliens, sort of medical dramas, where the sort of the story comes out of, xenobiology, and kind of trying to figure out how to cure all of these different alien bodies that all have different methods of care, when you're understaffed and you don't have the right technology and you don't even completely understand how they work. I mean, like medical mysteries almost. Like that just sounded really really interesting to me. And it's, as I say, it's a subject I'm surprised hasn't been explored more in science fiction. So I bought these three because I couldn't remember which ones I already had. So I just bought these three because I don't know when I'm going to see them again. And then I found out I actually do. This is the first book, and I actually own a different copy of this. I went back and checked with one of my earlier videos, so my videos actually serve a purpose. So I do actually already own this one, but I don't know where it is. It's in boxes somewhere. So I might actually set this aside and read this now that I'm reminded of it again. Yeah, I might set this aside and read this and see how I like it, because I've always been really, really... Sorry, I'm like shaking it around. I've just always been really, really intrigued by that concept, so it just sounds awesome. I don't know, man. Everything's a gamble, you know? Oh, this was another frustrating one. So again, not something I would normally buy, but this is Shades of Winter by Linda Fallon. There we go. This is Shades of Winter by Linda Fallon. This was just something, it was in the horror section at half price, but I read the back of it, and it's really more of like a paranormal romance. It's even, I don't know if you can see there, zebra historical romance. So, that happens a lot where they classify a lot of sort of like gothic romance in with horror and stuff like that, which, don't get me wrong, there is a crossover, but I would classify this more as paranormal romance. It's about a woman whose like husband is a ghost hunter, and he left her at the altar to go like and he was to like chase another spirit, and she has to kind of like rescue him from these spirits that have like trapped him and stuff. As I say, it's very gothic, very romantic, sort of paranormal romance type stuff, and that's not normally my kind of thing, but like I just really love ghosts, and as I say, I'm used to reading, hetero romances and having to translate them, so if they can get to a level where they're good enough that I enjoy that, then I'm happy. But again, just like the L.R. Rom book, I found out that this is number 2 in a series. So I don't want to have to buy, because it's just a little paper. I bought this for like $2. I don't want to have to like buy another one on Amazon for like $8. So I might head back to half price at some point and just see if I can find the first one in the paranormal romance section, because they do have one. Sorry, am I shaking that around? Sorry. I actually meant to check that last time I was at half price, but I couldn't remember the author's name. But that does sound interesting. I love ghosts and I love romantic, stuff within, sort of gothic settings, gothic romance, We'll see. Oh yeah, this one looked interesting. Oh, and again, I think I found out... No, yeah, this is volume 1, because I almost got the second one for this too, but I saw on the back here. So yeah, this is The Dark Angel by Meredith Ann Pierce. I really like this cover. It's one of these like magic carpet books. They tended to be like reprints of like early 80s, like late 70s sci-fi and fantasy stuff. Indeed, actually, because I believe this edition is from like the early 2000s, but I was looking it up because I wanted to know more about the author. And this is originally published in 1982. So on the back it talks about, Ariel is kidnapped by the Dark Angel, swept up into his dozen black wings and carried to his distant keep. Talks about, serving his brides and all that stuff. It's very like Dark Angel, that type of thing. And I was like, that sounds interesting. I look it up and I didn't even realize it's a vampire story. So I'm not sure like really what it's about. It's just some strange little dark fantasy vampire thing, that like goes really hard with like the Christ imagery, I guess. I don't know, but very gothic, which is appropriate. And it's from 1982, so I'm kind of hoping it'll have some of that, very early 80s goth, World of Darkness type thing, Don't know. I was intrigued. Now we have a Horror Show by Greg Kine. Again, an author I've never heard of, but I was just very struck by the cover art. And it's a Tor paperback. Oh yeah, and that classic font. Yeah, it's about a reporter in the '90s investigating the story of an old Hollywood film from the 50s. A Hollywood zombie movie. That like turns out to be like a real zombie outbreak, and about kind of what happens to them and stuff. And I mean, I was just sold just based on that premise alone. Just 1950s black and white, zombie outbreak, sort of pastiche, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but maybe it goes someplace serious too. I don't know. It just sounded intriguing. And I was really happy because I got this for like $1.50 at half price. And then I looked it up, and in other places it was going for like $10. So I don't know if this is like worth anything, but yeah, it just looks interesting. I don't know. I'm always down for like fictional old, horror films and stuff, playing into the narratives and all that. So I don't know. And then these last two are writing manuals, both very different from each other. I don't normally buy writing manuals, but I've been kind of trying to get back into the swing of like writing a little bit more and like thinking a little bit more seriously about it. Not like, to be published or to do anything big or crazy, but just, for myself, just to do better. And I don't really enjoy writing manuals that are just like very prescriptive, like here is how you must write a story, I enjoy the stuff that's a little bit more like, memoirs or like, essays, where it's more interpretive and it's more you're kind of like guided down places that you can try and see what works, And I've heard a lot about this one in that regard. This is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, some instructions on writing and life. Again, it's categorized more as like a series of essays or in like personal reflections that tie into, her writing and how she feels about writing and stuff like that. Very much in the vein, from what I understand anyway, of like On Writing by Stephen King. And that kind of tends to be the thing that works better for me. I just don't like the idea of like, being stuck to like a rigid set of rules that say like you must do this, you must do that, because I feel like that just kind of sucks all the joy out of art, Everybody's got guidelines, but it's different for everyone. But, we'll see how I feel about it. And anyway, like at least if it's well written and it says some sort of insightful things about writing, that'll be enough for me. I'm happy with that, So, but if it inspires anything, that's awesome too. I hope so. And then this was another one, just because I was in the same section. This is Man Oh Man, Writing MM Fiction for Kinks and Cash by Josh Lanyon. I mean, of course, obviously, as I say, I don't normally buy writing manuals, but this was just such an unusual find that I had to grab it. I've actually heard a lot about Josh Lanyon in, male, fiction circles and stuff, and I just didn't know that there was, like, a market for something like that, nevertheless that there was, like, a print book. And I looked at the copyright, and it's from 2008, which, scarily, is almost 20 years ago now, which was kind of the first blossoming of, that whole kind of scene through, a slash fiction and, and the proliferation of ebooks and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. As just a historical document, I really was just like, man, I want to pick this up and read it. I actually started it. I read the introduction. And actually, I actually really enjoyed the introduction. He talks a lot about sort of like his own little philosophies of writing and the reasons that, he's heard from people about why they like to read and write this type of stuff, and just general thoughts about like audiences, and he's just very open-minded about it all. Like he goes on to talk about, there are people who say, like, oh, like women can't write gay men or vice versa or whatever, and he defends it very strongly that, he believes that like anybody can write about anyone as long as you do so, with like intelligence and honesty and empathy and the same thing you would do for any other character in a book. You would do your best to give them as much interest and just three-dimensionality as you would any character, or whatever needs may be, And he says several times throughout the introduction that he's like, my only qualifications for writing this are because I am a successful author in this field, He's like, feel free to like disregard everything, And it's just very like kind of humble and very sort of like open-minded, and I was really drawn in by that. So who knows? This might actually contain some interesting advice. I'm sure a lot of the technical stuff is going to be outdated about submitting things and magazines and places that how to submit query letters and that sort of stuff. But still, it seems like really genuinely interesting, so I might actually read that. I don't know if I'll do a whole video on it, but I just, this is what I love about books, man. Just the things you find, and what a perfect one to end on, because it's super gay, and this was one of those just complete, this was like complete random. I was going to the writing section to look for this book, and I think Aaron, like, pulled this out of the shelf, and he was like, what's that? And I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know. I'm not prone to magical thinking, but, it was just like, that's what I love about this, man. So, yeah. It's been a good month. feeling pretty good about things, actually, so I'm hoping to make a video on my recent reads soon. Once I finish a couple other books I'm reading. I'm like almost done, so I will try to have that out in the next few days. We'll see, but yeah, I've got a lot to to sort through, and I'm also reading a lot of interesting things for my friend's book club and things like that as well. So lots to talk about. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed, and thank you for being so patient. And yeah, until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hello, hello, hello. We're talking about this book today. Hello.
Hello, hello, how are you doing? How are you?
I hope you enjoy my book review. Thank you.
Martel's Bookshop and his bloody big book review.